yeah, I guess that's there. There are a lot of in case of podcast managers. I mean, what would be um, how would being in a podcast help them, or how will starting a podcast help them? So you try to paint that picture, and if you have case studies of other clients who are in a similar journey, capitalize on that, because chances are your target client might just see himself um, in that same case study.
You're listening to that podcast exchange. The show that will provide you valuable information and advice from world class podcast experts to teach you the best practices to be successful in podcasting. The show for early stage podcasters and service providers to give them the latest trends, news, and new opportunities in the podcast industry. Now, on to the show with your host, Miko Santos, the founder of Kangaroofern Media Lab.
How can an AI tools be used to enhance personal branding and effort on LinkedIn? What are the potential pitfalls of using AI for personal branding? Like what, losing a human touch, over surveillance on data, ethical consideration. On today's episode of that podcast exchange, we're gonna talk about personal branding, AI, and LinkedIn as well. So for today's episode, we're talking to a personal branding expert and content strategist, and she helped a lot of people on personal branding. She also belonged to 100 most influential Filipino women in LinkedIn in 2023. Her journey began in the late 90s within the Philippines retail and architectural sectors. Please welcome to the show, Jeanette Kahukom. Hello.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Thank you for the kind words, Miko, and yeah, thank you for this invitation, for the opportunity to add value to your audience.
Thank you so much for that. So, Jeanette, I remember one of your posts that every time you wake up, your question to yourself is, how can I attract the clients that not only excite me, but also need my expertise the most? Well, you ask that question every morning.
Yes, I guess this is a bit personal. This is a bit personal to me, Miko, because um I guess it also has something to do with my age. I guess gone are the days when I focused on purely ambition. I guess it now boils down to purpose. I mean, every time I wake up in the morning, I mean, how can I add value? How can I help? How can I, share a perspective that would somehow help someone struggling? Because I believe that a lot, a lot of the things that can fuel us have something to do with the mindset. So I guess, it just actually fuels me when I know that I can add value. But there are days when it's really a struggle um, to answer how I can give value, because at the end of the day, no, just relying on your expertise and all that, it's I believe that it's not really about simply impressing people, but more of expressing in the most invaluable way possible, if that makes sense. So it's really more because of purpose rather than ambition. So yeah.
Uh, so ambitious and purpose. You are content strategies and personal branding. Most of the listener right now and also watching this through YouTube or Facebook, they are most of them are podcast managers who are producing podcasts for their client. How can AI tools be used to enhance your personal branding effort? Especially most of podcast manager like me are getting client through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I can I, I can somehow relate to that because I started a podcast back in the early days of the pandemic, back in 2020, your brand, your story. And back then there were no AI tools. Well, at least none to my knowledge during that time. And it was, it was a struggle, because a lot of time consuming research needed to be spent in finding out what would add, what would add value to a client's journey for them to see the value, I guess, of podcast services, for example. So it was, but the good thing about it, the because AI tools weren't, existent, at least in the Philippines during that time. um, there was more personal connection, more human touch, because in my case, I literally had to ask clients questions like, what what are your challenges at the moment? What are your frustrations at the moment? Basically, questions surrounding pain points. So I was able to get the answer straight from the horse's mouth, ika nga. But then this time, I mean, if let's say you're at the advantage today, if let's say your goal as someone who want to attract clients, if your goal is to attract more clients and to save time, and that's where the benefits or the advantages of AI tools come in, because with AI tools, I was able to discover that, you can ask you can ask AI tools to do some analysis on what the frustrations, desires, pain points of your target audiences is. So that basically chunks a lot of time on your part when you do the research. So that being said, that in itself is somehow a brainstorming process also. So with that information, you can now sort of curate your content based on what the AI tools has identified, whether we're talking about frustrations, struggles, or desires. So in that sense, if you think about it, if you publish a simple post out there on LinkedIn or an episode of a podcast, it it immediately connects to the audience, and it makes your target audience, the audience that you want to attract, think that, oh, you're speaking their language. So I guess, it's I guess compared to during the time when I started the podcast, when I didn't use any AI tools, compare that versus today, there really isn't much of a difference except the time, and I also somehow get to cover more bases, because before, when there were no AI tools, I was only able to talk to a certain demographic. But with AI tools, you can leverage AI tools if you want to reach out to a wider range of a demographic. So yeah, that's the difference that I see. So yeah, I hope I was able to answer your question.
So you said earlier about posting on different social platform. What what do you think? What are the ethical considerations surrounding AI generated content and it is used for your personal branding?
Yeah, for me, first of all, whether there are AI tools, whether AI is existent or not, the essence, the concept of personal branding should forever be based on one's own clarity. So now that AI tools are there and one can leverage it for one's personal brand, I think it should still, our own clarity, our own personal brand should still serve as our, inner compass. Inner compass. So when I say inner compass, because when we talk about personal branding, we're not just talking about skills and expertise. We're also talking about, what we stand up for, what core values do we believe in, what problems can we naturally solve, what problems are we naturally good at solving. So I guess, whenever, regardless of what AI tool you use and regardless of the output that it generates, no matter how impressive it sounds, we should still, we should still use our own clarity and what we believe in. I guess a simple example would be if, let's say, you use AI to write your own personal narrative, your own personal brand story to make it really, um, uh, to really make it look like, a journey, for example, because AI can do that. But then if you review it, if you're if you're going to review, and then since you know who you are on a personal level, and if AI puts an output that is not aligned to who you really are as a person, then your compass should tell you that, oh, this is not the direction where I want to go. Because doing so, it's just gonna be disservice. Personally, it's gonna just be disservice to yourself in the long run, and you may not be able to sustain it when you attract clients. So I guess that's the main ethical consideration for me, is to, to use your own clarity as your inner compass, regardless of the AI tools that you use. I mean, to still, I mean, we always advocate, right? Being authentic, being transparent, um, and yeah, I guess we should stick to those kind of basics, because who we are is what we can sustain for the long haul. And if you rely on what AI puts out there on your behalf, yeah, like what I said, you might not be able to sustain it.
So you're saying human input will always be essential despite of this
Yes,
AI.
yes, yes, I believe so. That should, I mean, I always tell this to my clients and to the students that I work with, that the more digital that we operate, meaning the more new technology comes in, I think there really is, the more that we should stay human. Yes, that's also that's what I believe in.
So do you think the AI can shape the future of personal branding?
Ah, in a way, yes, because I see a lot of clients going in the direction of leveraging practically every social media platform out there to amplify their personal brand. And if you couple all of these social media platforms with AI tools, it it can really it can really magnify your personal brand, 10x, or maybe even more. I do see that it's gonna help someone to reach more people. I mean, just even with just the invention of the internet alone, it has already leveled the playing field for everyone. If you think about it now, and now that AI is out there, every person can can really amplify one's personal brand. It's just I guess the question is, while AI can help make a powerful personal brand, the question is, will that personal brand be sustainable? That still depends on the person himself. So yeah.
Very well said. For, say, for entrepreneurs and solopreneur or podcast manager that have their own client as well, what are your, let's say, top three tips for building a powerful brand on LinkedIn to attract client and, of
Mm,
course, grow your business?
yeah, that's a very good question. Business owners, solopreneurs, they have a common denominator. It's already a given that they want to generate revenue. So um, it it's already a given. So I would suggest, I highly recommend that you set it aside. That you set aside the revenue generating part. Otherwise, you might do your personal brand disservice if you want to be known, if you want to be known as someone who's just after the financial aspect of it. So instead, I I would recommend, number one tip is to create a personal brand where you are perceived as a problem solver problem solver of your target audience. So what is that one thing, that one problem that your business can solve for your target market or for your target customer? And I guess third, once you're able to identify that, engage. Because it is through engagement that you're able to find out the struggles of your target customers behind those problems, and it is an opportunity for you, of course, to connect. I mean, while it remains a fact that there will always be competitors out there, meaning other businesses who are offering the same products or service, it would be more advisable to to put your focus rather on your customers than your competitors. And uh, and lastly, be adaptable, because in who knows what will who knows. I mean, I remember when chat gpt wasn't introduced yet, a lot of people were talking about blockchain, nft, metaverse, and now ai. So who knows what will come next. So I guess it's important, regardless, if let's say that the product or service that you're offering is something that people will need for the long haul. It's still important to stay adaptable, because um, a customer's personas, a customer's problems evolves. So should you. So yeah, I guess those are my top three.
So you're saying you have to be adaptable and know your client. So
Yes.
how, in LinkedIn or other social media platform, there's a lot of people saying they're expert. They have their own experience. They have their own strategies. So how can you showcase your expertise and establish yourself as a, like, as a thought leader in your industry?
There are different ways. Actually, no, it's I really don't personally. I really don't consider myself as an expert. I consider myself a lifelong learner because I do know that the people that I want to attract, the people that I want to help, um, their their needs can change anytime. So that being said, I have to always evolve and learn new things. So yeah, um, going back, I'm sorry, what was your what was your question again? I had
So,
yeah, uh-huh,
so you're saying you need to be evolved.
yeah,
So there's a lot of expert in LinkedIn.
yeah, mhm,
How would you establish yourself, or say the who's listening right now or watching right now, as a
mhm,
podcast manager, as a solopreneur, to to be like a thought leaders on their industry that they
mhm.
belong?
I guess first, I guess before anyone showcases his expertise or skills, there is a lot of listening, a lot of time to be dedicated in listening that has to take place. And since we're now in the digital era, I guess we need to dedicate a lot of time, doing social listening, checking out forums, what people talk about, what people ask to address their struggles, things like that. I guess it's important that we have a mindset where we put the needs of our target audience first or our customers first, because only then, if we prioritize that need, only then will our expertise be relevant to them. I guess gone are the days, and this is something I'm speaking from experience, because I remember back then I sort of applied the spray and pray technique. If you're familiar with it, when you say spray, it's like you put content out there and just hoping and praying that somebody will engage in your post and say and notice your expertise through your post. And it doesn't really work that way. And I noticed that when I started to engage, when I started to pay attention to not just their posts but their comments and the questions that they ask, and uh, and strategize my content around their questions. And that was when I started to see alignment. So I guess it's more of putting the other person first rather than yourself. That's where that's where the value of your expertise will be seen. So
Fo- okay, so following up on your question, on my question, is that, so you need to follow your value, you need to know your niche, you need to know your customer avatar. What do you think is the common mistake do people make when personal branding on LinkedIn, and how can they avoid it?
mm, um, the common the common denominator that I see among young professionals and aspiring business owners, or even transitioning freelancers from those who are in corporate for the long time and want to transition to become a freelancer or solopreneur, is that they think that their personal brand is just about their skills. It's like they see themselves just as a pair of two hands that knows something, that knows a particular specialty. Little do they know that there's a lot of competition out there, meaning people with the same skill set as theirs, that clients can no longer distinguish, that they cannot decide who to hire. And thinking of your personal brand, thinking of yourself just as a pair of hands with experience and skill set is for me is a disservice to yourself. I I would suggest that you craft a personal brand that's not just about the skill set or expertise, but also someone with values, and of course someone who has a unique value proposition. Because at the end of the day, what the client wants to hire is not just, is not just a skill set. Because let's face it, clients out there are also digitally empowered, so they know that a particular skill can be learned in just a matter of, from minutes to days, to hours to days. And their main decision for hiring someone is no longer solely about whether a person can do it or not. It's more of, can I trust this person? And when you say trust, it's we're really talking more about, the core values rather than just skills. So yeah, I hope I was able to answer that.
So you said values and scale. What do you think? What role does storytelling play in building a compelling personal brand on LinkedIn or
Yeah,
other social media platform?
yeah, that's a very very good question. um it's Imagine, this is the scenario that I'm gonna paint. This is the picture I'm gonna paint. Imagine you're in a job interview, and your interviewer asks you, tell me tell me something about yourself that's not on your resume. It's a standard question. And and usually, yeah, they would get the question, okay, what's not in my resume that I can share? And they would start to say things like, I'm trustworthy, I'm hardworking, I'm patient, I'm always willing to learn, I'm easy to work with, things like that. While they may all be true, there's no doubt about that. But imagine you are applying for a job, and only one will be hired, and then there are like 100 of applicants who are applying for the same position outside. So this is where storytelling comes in. You have to answer, okay, what what led you to be that hardworking person that you are today, right? What led you to be that trustworthy person that you are today? So, what's your story? How can you really say that you're hardworking? What if the other applicants also say that they're hardworking? So, how are you different from them? So this is where your personal story comes in. No matter how many applicants say that they're hardworking, your being hardworking is still unique, because you come from a different space than the other applicant. So what's your story? So, and it's something that, that people put trust on. I mean, let's face it, do you think a client would immediately say, okay, you're hardworking, I trust you? It doesn't work like that. So yeah.
Yeah, you're correct. And I remember when I was applying for a job, it always tell you, "Can you tell me about self?" And then most of them are telling a different, just like what you say, just say hard work. I'm industrious, but because the recruiter usually they'll try to get more in depth, not the normal norms that you're always saying. So yeah, I totally agree for that. So, okay, my last question for you, Janet. What are some final actionable tips you can share for our podcast managers who want to leverage LinkedIn to grow their business through personal branding?
Mm, yeah. I'd still I'd still give the classic, a value adding strategy. It's all about, of course, putting your target client, the client that you want to attract, at the center of all your strategy is still always effective. And couple it with, value adding strategies. But I guess, because one thing that I noticed, regardless if we're talking about podcast managers or service providers, or entrepreneurs or solopreneurs or virtual assistants, um, they usually say that yes, I'm giving value, I'm adding value to my post, I'm even offering, services for free. But you have to know, at the end of the day, you have to know, because value is still subjective. It may be of value to you, but you have to also be able to answer the question, is it also of value to the client that you want to attract? So you really have to know your client on a deeper level. I mean, dig deep. What are their people? What are their frustrations? Be part of their journey. I mean, if there's a way that you can wear their shoes in a day, then that's the way that you'll know, if because that what would be of value to them is something that would help them to get from point A to point B. So you have to answer that question. Is the value that you can give to your client, will it be able to get them from point A to point B? And that's when you know that if you are really adding value. So yeah, I guess that's there are a lot of, in case of, podcast managers. I mean, what would be, how would being in a podcast help them, or how will starting a podcast help them? So you try to paint that picture. And if you have case studies, of other clients who are in a similar journey, capitalize on that, because chances are your target client might just see himself, um, in that same case study. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Janet. So, if someone want to contact with you or have a conversation, how can they contact you?
Oh, thank you for the chance to invite. Yeah, I'm active on LinkedIn. I actually just resumed my newsletter, so people can reach me on LinkedIn. My name on LinkedIn is Jeanette Kahukom, and yeah, if they're not active on LinkedIn, they can also reach me through email. My personal email is jkahukom, that's JCAJUCOM @gmail.com.
All right. Thank you so much for that. So, thank you, Janet Kahukom. She is a personal branding, content strategist, and empowering entrepreneurs to tell their story and drive business growth. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much, Nico. And more power to your podcast.
Thank you so much. This is another episode of That Podcast Exchange, and see you next week for an exciting interview again from the expert. Thank you. And this is Miko Santos. See you again.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted in Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, or via RSS. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, rate and review this podcast and share it with your friends. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us